After taking care of my stepdaughter throughout college, she invited her dad to the best student's graduation and said I was not needed there. When I saw the program online, I took an action that changed everything. I will tell you everything. First, let me quickly thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout out in our next story. Today's special shout out goes to Janet Armstrong from South Africa. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's go deeper into the story. It started with a sticky note on the fridge, just a tilted pink square under the orthodontist appointment magnet. It read, "Dinner, Saturday 7 p.m., please dress nice." No names, no details, just a casual reminder in Ella's tidy handwriting, like it was any other event. But the moment I saw the envelope resting beside a stack of unread mail on the kitchen counter later that night, my stomach dropped. Thick ivory cardstock, her name embossed in gold like a private ceremony. Formal, polished, and already opened. Curious, I pulled the invitation out. It was an official letter from the high school, congratulating Ella for ranking in the top 10% of her class. There would be a dinner in the school gymnasium, a formal gathering for graduates and their chosen guests. 2 seats per student. 2 people allowed to bear witness to the culmination of her high school years. My eyes skimmed the names scribbled in Ella's handwriting. Clinton Martin plus Marla. Not David. Not me. I stared at the paper, stunned. Not angry yet, just confused. Maybe even embarrassed. I had assumed, foolishly, that I would be going. I'd gone to every parent-teacher conference, every spring concert, every late-night emergency Target run for poster board and glue sticks. I stood beside her through years of school projects and rejection letters and AP stress meltdowns. But apparently, I didn't make the final cut. Marla was at the stove when I walked over with the invitation. She was stirring a pot of tomato sauce, slow and distracted. Her back stayed, turned as I held out the card. "She only gets 2 guests for the dinner," she said quietly. Her voice didn't have much life in it. It wasn't cruel, just already tired of the conversation we hadn't even had yet. Slowly, it dawned on me. She picked her father. I said, my voice too calm, too flat. Marla nodded, still not facing me. He hasn't had a chance to be part of things. It felt right. It felt like a punch. Clinton, who lived 3 states away and rarely called unless prompted, was now worthy of front-row seating. He was always the guest star, the man who showed up when the lights were already on and the story well underway. But that didn't seem to matter. Biology won out. Nostalgia and last names seemed to carry more weight than consistent, quiet love. "I'm the one who helped her build a papier-mâché DNA model in 7th grade," I said slowly. "The one who stayed up with her when she couldn't sleep after failing that trig quiz. Who taught her how to parallel park in the high school lot. But yeah, sure. Let's give the seat to the guy who sends Amazon gift cards twice a year." Marla turned the flame down low. "It's not personal, David. That's the phrase people throw out when they're about to say something that cuts. It feels personal," I replied, setting the invitation down on the counter like it burned. "She just wanted him there this time," she repeated. "He's her father." I nodded, but something inside me began to calcify. I didn't scream or raise my voice. I just went quiet. I thought of all the mornings I drove Ella to school after Clinton forgot to show, of the scraped knees I bandaged, of the therapy sessions I sat outside of, waiting with her favorite snack in hand. All of it now revised and omitted in the version of her story she wanted to tell in that room. "So I fill in the gaps, and he earns the moments?" I asked. Marla turned around finally. Her face was soft but tired. "He missed so much." "And I didn't?" I asked. She didn't answer. That night, I lay beside her in bed, staring at the ceiling. She was reading something on her phone, eyes glowing in the dark. I stayed perfectly still. My side of the bed felt colder than usual, though the air conditioner hadn't kicked on. I traced the cracks in the ceiling with my eyes, counting them like stars. I thought about Ella in her cap and gown. I thought about Clinton posing with her in photos I wouldn't be in. I thought about how he'd probably say something charming and vague about being proud, even though he hadn't proofread a single college essay or knew how hard she'd worked for her scholarships. Then it hit me. Not only had I been excluded from the dinner, I wasn't invited to the graduation either. No one had said it out loud, but I hadn't received a ticket, hadn't been asked for my availability. And something about that silence felt even worse than being left off an RSVP. There's a specific kind of hurt that comes from being overlooked. It's not loud like betrayal or sudden like heartbreak. It creeps in slowly, each slight another paper cut until you're bleeding from 1,000 invisible places. I turned to face the wall, not Marla. She didn't notice. Or if she did, she didn't say anything. The ache wasn't just in being left out. It was in how easy it had been for them to do it. The house buzzed the next morning like a hive freshly disturbed. Marla was on the phone before I'd even finished my coffee, confirming something with the caterer the school had outsourced. Ella shuffled through a short checklist, bouncing between rooms, shoes, gown, earrings. Everything she touched had a nervous, fluttering energy to it. The house was alive with celebration, but I had become its quiet ghost. I ironed my shirts for no reason, folded the laundry no one had asked me to handle, and waited for instructions that never came. Ella had graduation practice mid-morning. She asked if I could drive her, and I said yes, of course. The silence on the way to school was thick, punctuated only by the clicking of her nail against her phone. She didn't say much, but she smiled when she stepped out of the car, mouthing a soft, "Thank you." I waited nearby and took her to lunch after. She picked a diner with grilled cheese and milkshakes, like she had when she was 12. For a moment, it almost felt normal. Back at home, I hovered in the periphery. Marla asked me to move my car so Clinton would have a spot closer to the front door when he arrived the next day. She said it like she didn't realize how it might land. I nodded and moved it without a word. That's who I was to them in moments like these, support staff. Logistics, not family. Ella appeared in the living room late that afternoon, twisting her bracelet between her fingers. Her gaze stayed low, like a child about to admit to breaking something. "I know it isn't fair," she said, barely above a whisper. "But I wanted him there. For once." There was no malice in her voice. Just this fragile guilt, wrapped in teenage hope. She still wanted the idea of Clinton to be enough, to show up, to make her feel like she hadn't missed out on having a real dad. I wanted to tell her everything I had stored in me. The recitals he missed, the father-daughter dances I stood in for, the birthday voicemail that came a day late every year. But I didn't. I didn't give her the weight of that resentment. Instead, I nodded once. "You're going to look amazing in your gown," I said. And I meant it. She smiled then, small and relieved. It wasn't that she didn't love me. I knew she did. But she wanted a moment with the version of Clinton she carried in her mind. The one who might show up clean-shaven and proud and say all the things he forgot to say for the last 18 years. That night, I sat on the back porch and called Jamie. He answered on the second ring, his voice low like he'd been waiting for me to reach out. "You really not going?" he asked. "Nope." We'd raised our kids side by side, Jamie and me. His son, Marcus, was also being honored. He was actually ranked higher than Ella, though no one brought that up. Jamie was going to the dinner without drama. His wife had joked about wearing heels that hurt, but there were no rifts, no absences. Just a clean celebration. "You're a better man than me," he said. I laughed dryly. "I'm not doing it for pride. I'm doing it because I wasn't asked." He was quiet for a moment. "They're gonna regret that." "Maybe," I said. "Maybe not." Then came the part that twisted something deeper. "You know he'll let her down," Jamie said. "You've always known." "I know," I said, and it came out like gravel. "And when he does, I won't say a word. That's the difference between us." There was a pause. The kind of silence only someone who's seen you at your worst knows how to hold. "I'll save you a seat at our table anyway," he said eventually. "Just in case." I thanked him, even though I knew I wouldn't go. The dinner was the next night, and Clinton was due to fly in that afternoon. The itinerary was all worked out. Ella was beside herself with anticipation, practicing her speech, making sure her curls would hold. Marla moved through the house like a woman choreographing a wedding, and I stood just outside it all. But I made myself a promise as I sat on that porch with the phone pressed to my ear and the weight of disappointment nestled quietly in my chest. I wouldn't vanish anymore. I wouldn't fade into the background. Even if I had to remain unseen, I would not be forgotten. Presence didn't have to be physical. Sometimes the loudest statements are made through absence. And what's left behind when you choose not to show up? After I hung up with Jamie, the silence in the house grew heavier. I stayed on the porch a while longer, watching the sun begin to dip beneath the neighbor's roofline. Jamie's words echoed in my head. He'll let her down. He said it like a certainty. And maybe it was. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had let myself down too, by letting it all happen so quietly. I'd spent so long making space for everyone else that I didn't know what to do with the emptiness they left behind. Inside, the house buzzed with low, scattered movement. Marla was getting ready upstairs, curling her hair, checking her makeup. I heard her heels on the hardwood, Ella's soft voice trying on her speech one last time in front of the mirror. The cinnamon candle was lit again. It smelled like fall, even though it was early June. A strange detail to anchor to, but my mind was grasping for anything that felt solid. I didn't go up to say goodbye. I stayed in the den, pretending to scroll through the news while they moved around the house like a parade I wasn't part of. At 6:55 p.m., I heard the front door close. Their laughter faded with the sound of heels on the driveway. No knock on my door. No final check-in. Just the fading hum of a car pulling away. I poured myself a glass of wine, turned on a playlist I hadn't touched in years, soft blues and instrumental jazz, and let the night settle around me like a coat I couldn't take off. At 7:30, I thought about how they were probably finding their seats. How Clinton might be making small talk with the other parents, flashing that smile he used when he wanted to seem engaged. Ella would be nervous, cheeks pink, hands clenched around her speech cards. I imagined it all like a movie I wasn't allowed to watch. At 9:02 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was Jamie. He's talking like he raised her. Like he was there for every parent-teacher meeting. Marla's not correcting him. I read the message 3 times. My stomach clenched. Not out of surprise, but out of familiarity. Clinton was doing what he always did. Filling in the blanks with his own story, inserting himself into chapters he'd never read. And Marla? She was letting it happen. Whether out of politeness, guilt, or weakness, I didn't know. But her silence hit harder than any of his lies. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I poured another drink and turned up the music. By 9:30, I heard the car pull into the driveway. The engine hummed for a moment before shutting off. Laughter again, Ella's, light and floating. Clinton's louder, more performative. The front door opened. I heard Marla's keys drop into the bowl by the entry table. They sounded like punctuation. Then footsteps, up the stairs, down the hall, Ella's bedroom door closing softly behind her. Clinton hung around downstairs for a bit longer, probably grabbing a drink or wrapping up some story. I didn't go out to see. I stayed seated in the den, still invisible. At some point, the front door opened and closed again. I never heard him say goodbye. The silence that followed was complete. The next morning, I woke up early. Sunlight crept across the bedroom carpet. Graduation day. I didn't move right away. I just lay there, listening to the soft creaks of the house. Marla in the shower, Ella's hairdryer in the other bathroom. I thought about how different it would feel to be a guest at my own child's celebration. How I wouldn't even be that. Not today. Downstairs, I made coffee and stood in the kitchen while the smell of hairspray and perfume slowly filtered through the vents. The mug warmed my hands, but it didn't reach my chest. I looked out the window and thought about the folding chairs being set up at the high school. How the gym would smell faintly of sweat and achievement. How everyone there would be smiling. Ella came down just after 8. She looked beautiful. The kind of beautiful that made your throat tighten. My little girl had grown. Hair curled, gown pressed, honors cord draped perfectly across her shoulders. She held her cap carefully, trying not to crease the tassel. "Morning," she said. "Morning," I replied, voice even. She poured cereal and stood in the doorway for a second before sitting. He had to leave early. Something about a connecting flight. I nodded. Figures. She pushed the cereal around with her spoon. He said he'll try to make the ceremony. Try, I repeated. She didn't meet my eyes. "I'm glad you didn't come to the dinner." I said nothing. It would have been tense. I smiled gently. Yeah, it would have. She looked up then, studying me. Maybe for the first time in weeks. "But thank you for the dress. It fits perfectly." "I know it does," I said. As Ella prepared herself, I took a look at Clinton's social media. He had already posted photos from the dinner, If you didn't know him, you would think he was a family man with a successful career. A post popped up as I scrolled through. Clinton in a charcoal suit, captioned "Back to business." The house stirred with the same energy as the day before. Ella moving lightly between the bathroom and her room, Marla pressing last-minute creases from her dress. It was a scene I'd watched for years. Preparation, excitement, pride. But this time, though invited, I was choosing not to go. Still, I moved through the house like something steady, and I had my own destination in mind. I waited until Ella came down, dressed and radiant. Her cap was clipped in place, her cords aligned perfectly over her shoulders. She looked every bit the young woman we'd raised, bright, kind, nervous. I handed her a bottle of water, as I always did before any big moment. She smiled cautiously. "You're not coming?" she asked, a small resigned smile on her face. I shook my head, sipping my coffee. "No, I've got something at work I can't get out of." Her face fell just slightly, then corrected itself. She didn't argue. I think part of her was relieved. It spared her the awkwardness of pretending last night had not happened, all that Clinton had not shown up for the actual celebration. Marla glanced at me from across the kitchen, but said nothing. Her silence was a kind of permission I didn't ask for. "I'll watch the live stream," I added. "Text me when you're lined up." "Okay," Ella said softly. "Thank you for everything." She meant it, but I couldn't tell if that made it better or worse. After they left, I changed clothes and drove, not to the office, but 2 towns over, where Clinton's big presentation was taking place at a corporate convention center. It was a major industry pitch, and Clinton had talked it up for months. "If this goes well," he told Marla over video call once, "it's going to get picked up nationally." I parked across the street and walked in through the lower level. The building buzzed with activity. The schedule outside the ballroom listed Clinton Martin at 11:15 a.m., next-gen branding through storytelling. Of course it did. No one loved a stage more than Clinton. No one wielded narrative like a man who'd rewritten his own absence into heroism. I made my way to the tech booth tucked along the side wall. My friend Nate was already there, early, like he always was. He greeted me with a raised eyebrow and a tight smile. "You're sure about this?" he asked under his breath. I nodded. "Just the truth. Nothing more." He handed me a small tablet, already queued. The slides were ready to swap mid-presentation, quietly, subtly, irreversibly. Clinton wouldn't even notice until the audience did. "I set the trigger for when he says her name," Nate whispered. "That's your cue." I took a seat 3 rows from the front and waited. At 12 p.m., Clinton stepped onto the side stage, adjusting his lapel mic. He wore a navy blazer over a pale blue shirt, polished, rehearsed, camera ready. He didn't see me. Not yet. The room dimmed. Someone introduced him. Applause scattered across the room like hail on a rooftop. Clinton began with a smile. "Today I want to talk about how the stories we tell shape the identities we sell. As both a father and a branding consultant, I've learned that timing and presence matter more than perfection." The irony almost made me laugh. I waited. He spoke of legacy, of re-engaging with markets and memories. And then he said it. "My daughter, Ella, just graduated this morning. Top of her class. Brilliant kid. Gets it from me." I tapped the screen. The slideshow behind him glitched, just for a second. Then, a screenshot. A message from Ella, time-stamped, her words bleeding across the screen. He forgot again. He always says he's coming, but never does. The audience murmured. Clinton paused, confused. Another slide replaced the first. A photo of a birthday cake, unlit. Then a message from Marla, 2 years back. David stayed up with her. She cried for hours. "You never called." He turned slowly toward the screen. Behind him, slide after slide queued in quiet succession, soft truths in hard text. Photos, words, memories, all the things he left behind. Not accusations. Just proof. Just history. Just the pieces of Ella and Marla that he didn't earn, that I had carried. Clinton's voice cracked. "I think there's some technical issue." But no one was looking at him anymore. They were looking past him, into the truth. And I sat still, watching him unravel. The applause never came. Clinton ended his talk early, his voice trembling, the screen behind him frozen on Ella's words from years back. He forgot again. The audience whispered as he walked off stage. his smile cracking like plaster in a storm. He muttered something about technical difficulties before slipping through the side curtain. The murmurs didn't fade, they followed him. His legacy wasn't polished now. It was punctured, bleeding in real time. I stood calm. My job was done. I moved toward the exit as the crowd buzzed. The hallway was cooler, emptier. My footsteps echoed on the tile. I thought I'd slip out quietly, blend into the departing crowd, and head home before Marla and Ella returned from graduation. But Clinton's voice stopped me. Raw, desperate, ragged. David, he barked. His dress shoes slapped against the floor as he rushed forward. He looked smaller than he had on stage, sweat on his collar, tie crooked, eyes wide with something between fury and fear. I didn't answer. I kept walking. He grabbed my shoulder hard enough to spin me. You think this was funny? His breath was sharp, his words spit-laced. You think ruining me makes you the better man? She's my daughter. Mine. I didn't flinch. She's also the one you left waiting. Again and again. His face reddened. You think you can erase me? I shook my head. I didn't erase you. You did that yourself. I just let people see it. Behind us, Nate appeared from the tech booth, tablet still in hand, trying to blend into the background. Clinton's eyes darted to him. He lunged. Before I could stop him, Clinton shoved Nate against the wall, forearm pressed to his throat. You little hacker, ruined everything. Clinton snarled. Nate struggled, choking, trying to twist free. I lunged forward, prying Clinton off him. Enough, I snapped. My voice was steadier than I expected. Clinton swung his arm back wildly, his fist grazing my jaw, but the chaos was already drawing attention. 2 security officers rushed from the ballroom entrance. One grabbed Clinton by the arm, the other moved Nate safely aside. Clinton thrashed like a man drowning, shouting over and over. It was him. He set me up. He's jealous. He's nothing. The officers pinned him against the wall. His blazer bunched, his tie pulled tight. His words came out strangled now, desperate. I'm her father. You can't take this from me. The police arrived minutes later, called by venue staff. Clinton was red-faced, panting, trying to regain his charm, but no one was listening. Not the officers who cuffed him, not the staff who whispered, not the attendees filing out with judgment painted across their faces. They led him away, his protests fading down the hall. Nate rubbed his neck, shaken but steady. He's done, he said, voice hoarse. That's it. I exhaled slowly, finally letting the adrenaline leave my body. I looked down at my hands, steady now. Not shaking, not trembling, just steady. Go home, I told Nate. You've done more than enough. He nodded and slipped out the side door. I stood in the hall a moment longer, listening to the last fragments of Clinton's outrage drift through the air like smoke from a dying fire. People passed by me, but no one stopped. No one asked questions. They had already seen the truth. There was nothing more to explain. I stepped outside into the sunlight. The air felt sharper, cleaner. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt the weight begin to lift. Not entirely gone, but lighter. My phone buzzed. A text from Marla. She walked the stage. She looked for you in the crowd. We both hoped you had changed your mind. Where are you? I stared at the screen. My reflection stared back. I didn't type anything. Not yet. The following evening, the house glowed with strings of lights and the hum of conversation. Friends, relatives, neighbors, everyone came to celebrate Ella. The dining table was lined with trays of food. A cake sat in the center, and a banner stretched across the wall. Congratulations, Ella. For a while, it felt like the day was hers again. She moved from group to group, hugging, thanking, laughing. I watched from the corner, drink in hand, quiet, steady. My role had always been the same. Stand behind her, make sure nothing collapsed. Marla flitted between the kitchen and the living room, balancing trays of appetizers and trying to keep the music loud enough to drown out awkward silences. She smiled when people congratulated her, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. She knew Clinton's meltdown was likely not over. A few people already whispered about it. But for tonight, Ella was supposed to shine. That was the plan. Until the knock came. The room went still. The knock wasn't casual. It was sharp, demanding. Marla froze with a plate in her hands. Ella stepped back from her friends, confusion in her eyes. I set my glass down and walked to the door before anyone else could. When I opened it, Clinton stood there. No tie, no blazer, just his wrinkled shirt from the previous day, collar loose, eyes wild. He had made bail, just as I suspected. And instead of retreating, he came here. Evening, he said, his voice hoarse but smug. I wasn't gonna miss my daughter's big party. People behind me murmured. Some recognized him. Others only felt the sudden drop in temperature. I didn't move aside. You shouldn't be here. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. She's mine. You can't keep me out. Then louder, stepping past me. Ella, kiddo, Daddy's here. Ella froze. The party hushed. She looked at him with disbelief. You're not supposed to, she started. Clinton smiled, spreading his arms as if nothing had happened hours earlier. Hey, I made it. Bail's just a bump. What matters is I'm here now, right? That's what counts. He reached for a plate, laughing too loud. Where's my slice of cake? Marla moved forward, trying to steer him away, but he brushed her off. You painted me as some villain, Marla. Told everyone I abandoned her. But look, I'm here. Who's the liar now? His words slurred, not from drink, but desperation. His voice filled the room like smoke. Something in me snapped. Enough, I said loud, sharp. The music cut off mid-song, the house silent except for my voice. You've had your stage, Clinton. You don't get another one here. He turned, smirking. Oh, the babysitter speaks. Still pretending, huh? Still clinging to what's not yours. I stepped forward. Pretending? 18 years of dinners, homework, tears, and triumphs. Does that sound like pretending? I was here. You weren't. I've always been here. And now it's time she sees the truth. Ella looked at me, wide-eyed. I held her gaze. You're 18 now. A grown woman. Old enough to choose. This isn't about me or your mom. Not anymore. It's about him, showing up when he feels like it, crashing when it suits him. And it's about you, deciding if you want that cycle to keep repeating. Clinton laughed, shaking his head. Don't listen to him, Ella. He's bitter. He's jealous. I'm your father. That can't change. But Ella didn't laugh. She didn't move. She looked between us. Her lip trembling, her hands clutching the edge of her gown. The room held its breath. Everyone was watching, but none of it mattered except her choice. I softened my voice, stepping closer. You don't owe him loyalty just because of blood. You don't owe me loyalty either. What you owe yourself is peace. You get to decide who deserves a place in your life. No one else can choose that for you anymore. Clinton's smile faltered. His bravado cracked. He reached for her, desperate. Ella, kiddo, come on. She pulled back. Stop calling me that, she whispered. He froze. She took a shaky breath. You weren't there. Not when I needed you. Not when Mom cried. Not when David stayed up with me because I couldn't finish my essays or because I failed a quiz. You don't get to show up now and pretend that makes up for it. Her voice grew steadier with each word. You wanted to be the fun parent, the one who swoops in. But that's not what a father is. And I don't want that anymore. Clinton's face went pale. You don't mean that. Ella met his eyes. I do. The silence was deafening. But my chest ached with pride. Maybe I had done something right after all. Finally, Marla stepped forward, her voice soft but firm. You should go. For once, Clinton didn't argue. His chest rose and fell quickly, his eyes darting between us. Then, without another word, he turned and stormed out. The door closed behind him, the echo lingering. Ella crumpled into tears. Her friends surrounded her, hugging, comforting. Marla moved to her side, holding her close. And I stood back, letting her have her space, proud in a way words couldn't capture. When the room finally exhaled, Ella looked at me. Her eyes were wet, but clear. Thank you, she whispered. I nodded. For what? For reminding me I get to choose. And in that moment, I knew she had chosen well. Not me over him. Not one parent over another. But herself, her peace, her future, her boundaries. Something Clinton could never give her. The party resumed slowly. Music returned. Laughter eventually followed. Clinton was gone. For good this time. And I wasn't invisible anymore. If you enjoyed this story, like, subscribe and share with your friends and loved ones. See you soon in the next story.